So I don't have to do anything on my end?
Nope, and we have started recording.
Okay. Good evening.
Yes. Hello, everyone. How are you doing? And welcome to another episode of the Dr. Will Show, where we have the discussions that inform, entertain, and empower educators to be the change. I am your host, Dr. Will, and I am here with Dr. Kim Lawe. How are you doing, Doc?
Great, and how are you?
I'm doing well. Today was a good day. I filed some warranties and did some accounts for teachers, and did a couple of troubleshoots. And outside of that, today was a pretty average day, I guess.
Yeah.
So it's
always interesting in education. There's never a dull moment in education. So I had a pretty productive day as well.
Awesome. So we're going to be talking to Dr. Lawe about STEM education, eSTEM Academy, where she is a director. We'll talk about innovation in education, and as well as, maybe she'll share a little personal story of hers that'll get everyone all motivated. So for those who are watching, will you please introduce yourself? Dr. Lawe, will you introduce yourself?
Oh, okay, I thought you... I'm here. I am Dr. Kim Lawe, and actually just call me Kim. I am here in Southern California, specifically in the Riverside County area. I am I guess you can say, immigrant from Vietnam. My family, I was born in Vietnam, and when I was 8 months old, my family came here to the United States to seek freedom, actually religious freedom from communism after the fall of Saigon in 1975. So, but we were boat refugees, and my father at the time had worked around boats to help build the boat that we escaped on, and we were picked up by U.S. Navy ships when we were our 10th day at sea. And then we ended up spending a couple of months in a Malaysia refugee camp. And we then found a sponsor family, or actually a church, a U.S. Catholic mission in Utah sponsored our family, and we came to the United States and set foot on American soil with just $5 in our wallet. And since then, I've learned from my parents that, this is the American dream. We have the opportunity. We got to work hard and be passionate about it, and not to take anything for granted, especially our freedom. So here I am. So I grew up we eventually relocated from Utah to Southern California, because that's when we reconnected with other family members who were also refugees from the first wave and the orderly departure program and boat refugees. And so in 1980s, when we then moved to Southern California, and I've pretty much been here since 1980, grew up in 20 miles east of Los Angeles area. Grew up there, went in the El Monte City school system, went to school there, and then I had every dream to become a medical doctor. I'm not sure if that was because I really wanted to, or was that the typical, okay, you're of a Asian family, you're going to go become a doctor or an engineer or a lawyer. And so with that, I had every dream, or at least I thought I was going to go into the medical field. Then I was the first in my family. I grew up we were 5 of us, 5 children. I am the 4th from the oldest. And so I was the first one to go to college. And so it was one of those where I knew my parents had made all these sacrifices for me, so I'm going to do the same for them. Went to the University of Redlands, got my undergrad in biochemistry. And I really had every plans to go on to medical school. But one summer I had done some internship with Loma Linda, and it just occurred to me, I just didn't feel connected working with sick people. My goal was to help people, but I didn't want to help in that way where I was trying to do, I guess you can say, intervention. I just would rather do preventative care, or, help give forward prior to any other issues. And so it was just kind of depressing in a sense, working with sick people. And I thought, okay, maybe this isn't for me. So I thought maybe I'll go into the medical field, but through lab research. And so I actually had a professor tell me, the best job, you need to go back and get your master's or continue your education if you're not going to go to med school. So the best job to take to be able to go back to school is teaching. And so I said, okay, and I knew nothing about teaching. I didn't go through any teacher prep program. And so I was told, oh, it's easy. You're done by 2:30, and then you can go on and go to school, take evening classes, get your master's and so forth. So my first year of teaching, I started in I believe it was 1999. So at that time, the state of California issued emergency credentials, and I'm not sure if it was a shortage of. And that was when we were transitioning into the California state standards. So I'm coming in and everyone says, oh yeah, with the science background, you can get a job very easily. So, just go and apply. So I went back to my district where I grew up, and one of the principals who was my former teacher said, yeah, I'll hire you in a heartbeat. But going in, I was just so worried about standards, lesson plans, grading, and I just, had no foundation or no, I guess you can say, coaching on classroom management. So I struggled that first semester, and I swore up and down I did not like those kids. Why did I go into teaching? This is not my thing. And I actually had an acronym for my students, and I called them WOW, worst of the worst. And I thought to myself, this is not for me. And I had every intention to quit. And I think a lot of first-year teachers, and that's why we can't, we have issues retaining our teachers because of some of those issues. And then it was the Friday before winter break that I was so excited to be able to not see these kids for the next 3 weeks. And that's when I was hit by a drunk driver that evening going to a company party with my husband at the time. He was my fiance. And that obviously changed my life. The drunk driver hit me. My car did cartwheels down the freeway embankment. And so I was in a coma, and everything on my left side of my body, from my skull to my arms and my legs, everything was pretty much crushed. So I was in the hospital in a coma. And so during that time, I still wasn't aware of what was happening. I remember waking up and asking why I was in the hospital, what had happened to me, why did I have stitches, why did I have pins in my legs. And so I had visitors, and one of my coworker, one of the teachers next door to me, she brought a bag of letters, and she said, these are from your students. And I was reading them, and I didn't realize during that short period of time what I saw as these kids were giving me headaches, I didn't realize I was making an impact in their lives, where some of these kids said, you were the only one that would look at me and smile, or, you're the mom I never had, and so forth. And so at that moment, I realized, seeing the images of my car and knowing what I had gone through, I realized that God had given me a second chance to live. And this was he had a mission for me, and he kept me alive to finish that mission. And so that is to stay in education. So I took the rest of the year off, obviously on disability, but I came back my second year, and I continued on since then. I was very intentional about making connections with my students, regardless of what it was I had to teach. I had to make connections with my students.
Wow.
So.
Okay. Now, when I saw the video that Azusa Pacific
University
did, and I'm looking at that going like, this is powerful. Because it's interesting, because you took that as a sign of, this is where I need to be.
Right.
As opposed to, this is a sign I got to do something different with my life to pursue something different. But you said, hey, this is where I need to be in the classroom with these students.
Right. Yeah, I was ready to quit, but just sitting there in the hospital, I remember looking out the window of the hospital room, and I thought to myself, okay, I can do one of two things. One, be angry at the world that, I have scars on my face. I have, I may not be able to walk again. My toes were partially amputated. I had all reasons to be angry at the world, but I thought to myself, you know what? I'm alive, and that's what matters. I'm alive, and I made impact on the lives of over 100 students in a short period of time. So I knew that I had a purpose, and I had to continue that. And so I was very purposeful in taking the route of, what, God gave me the second chance, and I'm just going to be very thankful, and I'm going to continue to fulfill his mission and do my work, do his work.
Okay, now. Okay. I don't even know we can... can we top that? I don't know. Wow. So how did your personal journey impact the person and educator you are today?
How did my journey? Well, I think growing up, seeing my father and hearing the story of I guess when I went through high school and college and I started to take Asian American studies, I better understood the Vietnam War, because in all honesty, growing up and just some of the images and pictures I saw in the US history book, the world history book, it was not matching up with the stories my parents were telling me. And so as I grew older and I appreciated more and I asked them more, hey, tell me about that. And so when I heard stories of how there were just dead bodies floating on the water, yet we got through it and our boat didn't get hijacked or robbed by, Thai pirates and all of that, I realized how lucky and fortunate we are. And so I would ask my dad, me being the science person, okay, Dad, how did you plan this? What did you do? And so he said he spent years just studying everything from the wind to where, what beach were they going to leave from, the ocean currents, the tides. I mean, who thinks about that, right? We think, okay, just jump in a boat and go. But he said he was very strategic in what he did in the planning. But he said what was most important was having that shared vision with the people that were willing to follow. And so just hearing that and extracting the leadership component of his story, I realized, you know what? I want to be like my dad. And when I go into education, and I just don't want to be the teacher. I guess at some point I realized I can make more of an impact in education and really be an advocate for equity and for access to all students if I go into the leadership, route rather than just stay in the classroom. And so as I took on the leadership route, just my dad's leadership style of the shared vision and leading by the heart is what inspired me. And so I think just remembering and going back to how my father, led our escape and 679 people in his little village, I realized, you know what, I need to be like him. And so his leadership style inspired me, which is leading with a shared vision, involving all stakeholders, letting them have a say in it. My dad said even the women had a role, which is, do this, do that. The kids had a role. The adult men had a role in this vision of leading. And so I realized that's how I need to lead when I'm leading a school or an organization. So he inspires me to he inspired me to go into educational leadership.
Mm. So you live by the quote, you can't be what you can't see. What does it mean to you to be an Asian woman who works in STEM education?
Well, going back to, first the quote, you can't be what you can't see. I know that when I talk to students and I want to go to the STEM Academy. Okay, why? Because I want to be a doctor or an engineer, kind of going back to what I said when I was a kid. But what they don't realize is within the medical and engineering field, there are so many different jobs, so many different, I guess you can say, career paths. And our students don't know that because all they see, whether it's in the TV or through the books, is, doctor, engineer, nurse, maybe a few other. And so with that quote, I'm very intentional when, through our program, I try and invite guest speakers and STEM speakers. We have a STEM speaker series. I'm very intentional about inviting different kinds of, STEM professionals to come and speak to the kids, because I know that can be, all it takes is just one person to connect with the student and say, okay, that's what I want to be, or this is the route I want to go. So with that, for me, as an Asian American in the STEM field, just even being a female, I think going through, my undergrad, the biology classes, I would say was pretty gender neutral, I guess you can say. But when I got into the physics classes and the computer science, it was just me and, maybe another female, and then the 90% of the class were male. So it was very difficult, but I think what got me through some of those challenges were the professors who were females. And so I think having seen female role models, or even, underrepresented, Asian professors as well, that helped me just kind of stay the course.
So folks who earn their doctorates make up 1% of the population. So it's kind of cool when I think about it. What made you pursue a doctoral degree, and how has what you learned in your EDD program influenced how you lead your school?
I would say, so how I said I wanted to become a doctor, and so I didn't go the medical route. And so I was telling my husband, I said, he goes, you know what? He goes, Kim, you're very stubborn, or you're very determined. And so when you say something, you mean it. So even though you didn't get a medical doctorate, he said, I really think you only went to get your doctorate in education because you still wanted that doctor title. I said, no. After I had gotten back from my recovery, remember I was on an emergency credential. So after I got back, actually when I was in the hospital, I remember reaching out to my college, a college professor at Cal Poly Pomona, which is a CSU, California State University here in Southern California. I reached out to him. I said, look, I know I want to be in education. How do I get my credential? And, and so he talked about the master's program. So he actually was visiting me in the hospital to do an independent study so I can start some of the coursework. So after I had finished my master's, I thought, okay, I'm done. And he said, you know what, you need to get your doctorate. And I said, well, why? That's just more money. I got to take out a loan. And he said, no, he said, you have the willpower. And he said, you have the desire to make more of an impact and have an influence in education. You need to get your doctorate. Don't stop here. So I just went and I looked at some schools, and immediately Azusa Pacific University had my attention because it's a Christian based university, and with the core values of Christ, scholarship and just servant leadership. I realized that was a school that I needed to go to, and it was close to home. And so as a teacher, I started my doctorate program as a teacher, and then it carried over when I went into administration.
Okay, so now I want to throw this out there to you. Your hooding. How did it feel when you sat there and they called your name, and then how they put the hood over you?
Right.
What was that feeling like?
My parents were sitting, well, actually I was invited to be the Grand Marshal. As you know, I don't know if you know that APU has used my pictures to do all kinds of advertisements, and they just, I guess they saw my story as well. And so I was invited to be the Grand Marshal to open the gates, because it's symbolic of opening the gate to not, it's not the end of the road, but it's the beginning of another journey. So I sat up front, and I had VIP tickets for my parents, so they were sitting right there. And so my son, he's 5 years old, or 4 years old at the time. And so the first thing that came to my mind was I looked over at him, and I wanted him to see me like I had seen my father. And so if it was anything, I just wanted to make sure that he saw me, and I made sure my husband, hey, if he's on his iPad, get him off. I want him to see me, because I want him to not necessarily get his doctorate, but just the perseverance, the sacrifices, and what my parents did for me, and for us to come to America to have the freedom we had. I wanted to make sure that he saw that I was doing that for all students as well as himself, because one day he may be one of my students, and I want to make sure that what I will give to him, I give to our students as well. So I wanted to make this. So what was going through my mind is I want my parents to see this because I did it for them, and I want my son to see it because I'm doing it for him and his generation of peers.
It was just such an experience for me, because I just remember, one, that day, because I had, my parents were there,
right?
Brothers and sisters were there, and it was so interesting because the first thing I remember was how hot that robe is.
They're heavy duty.
Yeah, yes. I'm sitting there, I'm like, whoo. I said, when is this graduation going to hit the show in the road? Come on, And then you get there, and then they, hood you and everything. And at first I told my wife that I was going to do the electric slide on the stage.
Right.
And my wife was like, no, you're not going to do that. She said, you want to be dignified. So I didn't do the electric slide. But when the graduation was over and we were just sort of out, my pops, who is not one of those praising individuals,
right,
told me he was proud of me. And that was proud. I don't even know if that was the first time he's ever said it, but he said it. And I had to fight back the tears. I had to use every male DNA I had,
right,
to not let the tears come down. And I had a little pitiful looking face, and my wife took a photo. And I look at that, when I see that photo, I'm like, oh my gosh.
Is it framed?
No, she didn't frame that one. But I was like, oh my gosh, look at that little terrible face. But just the experience, because I always ask people, like when it's over, how do you feel? Because not many people know that journey we go through to get there.
Right.
And so I just want to ask you, like, about that, because
It was the feeling of, it wasn't even for me. I think, a couple of things also ran through my mind is like, when my father, left that sandy beach of South Vietnam, did he realize this is what he will see in, 40 years, and just things like that. Or like when he set foot on America and made all these sacrifices for his kids, I thought to myself, I wonder if he was expecting to see this. And so it really, at the end of the day, my doctorate journey was really for my parents and for my son and my husband, my family. Because, as you go through the journey, and I'm sure your wife knows this, late nights, the paper writing, hey, take the son out because I need to, finish. And so all of that, it was, you at the end of the day, when you get that hood, you get the degree, it really is for all the people, the backbone of your life that supported you all the way through.
Oh yeah. And one of the things, I guess, that got me emotional was just thinking about, my father was born in 47. Now, think about 1947, United States in Mississippi. And so we're talking colored only water fountains and all of that. And to do that, and then, I spoke to my aunt, my favorite aunt, by the way, Aunt Alma. And when I spoke to her, she was like, well, how does it feel to be the first doctor in the family? And I was like, wow. I'm getting chills right now. I'm gonna get out this conversation because I can't get emotional on this podcast right now. It's video, but to see sort of where from there to here, where we have become, it was real cool. And I'm the third. And I always put if doctor is in my name, the third is always there. And I was interviewed for this book, and this person was like, do we have to put the third in your name? And I said, yes, because I don't want to say the fulfillment, because I don't have any children. So I guess I am the fulfillment of what they wanted their life to be.
Right.
So I was like, okay, yeah, you put that third right there. Now, people, I know we kind of got off track talking about this, so I hope you're still with me.
I'm here.
So you are the director of eSTEM. By the way, people, you go to that website, I'm telling you, it's going to blow your mind away about the things you're learning about this school. What are the founding principles of eSTEM, and how important is it for students to receive a hands-on, dynamic, innovative education?
So the founding principles of Eastvale STEM Academy, so a little bit of background. So the Eastvale STEM Academy is kind of, it's a newer concept for our district. And so Corona Norco Unified School District is the 8th largest. It's either 8th or 9th largest in California. We service about 53,000 students, and we have 50 schools pretty much. So with the schools, we have 5 comprehensive high schools. So, and it spans 3 cities, a city of Eastvale, Corona, and Norco. And so with that, Eastvale is a growing city. It used to be a lot of dairy farms, and so they started to build homes. And then so families started to move in, and families really from the Los Angeles area were moving in eastward. And so there's one high school in that city, and it's called Eleanor Roosevelt High School. And so when I actually started there at first as an assistant principal, we were at about 3,200 students. That school was built in 2006. So currently we're at 4,400 students. And so, and the school was built for 4,000 students. So we actually have students and teachers in portables. And so the question was, okay, so Eastvale continues to grow. We anticipate Roosevelt to reach 5,000 students, which is just insanely, big. And so the question was, do we build another high school in Eastvale? But we know at some point the homes will stop building, the population will level off, and so do we open up another, multi-million-dollar high school only for the student population to drop, and then we end up with an empty building? Or do we build in addition to Roosevelt High School? So there were talks back and forth, and so it was brought up that, hey, if we're going to build build Roosevelt out, why don't we build with a purpose? And so some conversation was going back and forth. And as we know, the need for STEM education, I think It was even in the principal's the president's advisory council report back in, 2014, that said by the year 2020, we're going to have 1,000, or 1 million STEM ready graduates to fill all of these jobs that we have. So the talk was, so we threw out the idea of the STEM high school. Okay, so do we build a STEM high school separate from Roosevelt? Do we attach it? What would it look like? And so we know that with the STEM high school, it may naturally, and actually it does naturally draw those students who are kind of the top students, the students who do want to go become an engineer or a doctor. And so do we do that and then take the top of the top, or the, students from Roosevelt, and it becomes a brain drain? What would that look like? And so we all agreed that it would be still under the Roosevelt School Code. So according to the state of California, we're still one high school, but the STEM Academy will be a separate building, separate administrative team, the students. And so we'll have an internal subcode, but it will still be Roosevelt students. So it's called the Eastville STEM Academy of Eleanor Roosevelt High School. But right now we call it eSTEM Academy. It's going to have its own building, and it's going to be kind of a separate entity internally, if that makes any sense. So with that, our founding principle is access, collaboration, and partnership. Access, we believe in all access for students. So right now we have no GPA requirement. We're open to any student who has the commitment and the passion and the desire to go into the STEM field, and that they're ready to be prepared for that, college and career ready in the STEM field. The second is collaboration. We push for collaboration. That's one of the 21st century skills, We want our students to collaborate and be able to collaborate, not work independently. I always say to our students, you know what? When you're admitted to the emergency room, is it just one person working on you, or is it a team of doctors and nurses and x-ray techs and all of that? And they say, oh yeah, it's a team. Or when you go to a construction site, is it just one engineer working, or is it a team of engineers and designers, builders? And so in the STEM world, or even in the real world, STEM or non-STEM, we're working in collaborative teams. And so that's one thing that we push for, not only just our students and our teachers as well. And then the partnership is so important. We can work with these students for 4 years and get them college and career ready, but I don't want to have them, walk across the graduation stage and say, okay, adios, you're on your own. No, so I think through partnership is where we're going to be building those bridges from high school to either the industry or to college, and help these kids, cross that bridge. And so access, collaboration, partnership is so important, and we live by that. And we make sure that from our enrollment process to how our teachers collaborate to the project-based learning that our students are involved in, it's collaborative, and we're working with our community for partnership.
Okay, so now I want to throw this out there to you, because I watched the video, and you spoke about how there can be students who, they may not know Shakespeare from a guy on the street, but when it comes to tinkering and being imaginative and building, they excel at that. So
right.
Will you please speak to the fact that different students have different gifts, and how schools must do a better job at recognizing those and helping them to further develop them?
Right. So here's a good example. So when you talk about access, we actually have students in the STEM program right now who are on IEPs, which are individualized education plans. They are, students who fall under the special ed program. We also have students who are on 504 plans, which is general ed, but they have to have accommodations. So here's a good example. So currently we have a student, I'm not going to mention name, but he has been, he's on the, autism spectrum. And he has a couple of D's and F's, and we're working with him, but he is so passionate about technology. And so last year he kind of got, red flag. We got red flagged by IT that there's this student who's bypassing IT, and so talk to him a little and say, wait, what you doing? Realize his strength is technology. He simply wanted to download Minecraft because he loves to build, and that's what got him focused. But he said, I made sure my work was done, and I was just sitting at a computer, so I figured it out. Okay. So instead of just shutting him down, I said, okay, how can we channel this into a positive, so I brainstormed with the teacher, what can we do with this student? He's not strong academically, but he has this passion, and he figured this out. And so we proposed about starting a student technology committee on campus, like, what can we do? So, okay, he got excited. He said, let me go home and create a business plan. So he went home, wrote up this extensive plan of how these students can help teachers and help, administration, help the school. Of course, we have to put parameters on it. And so he continued that passion. So we fostered it, and we let, had to set some parameters so he's not, upsetting IT. But he came to us the other day. He said, hey, so I developed this app. I said, this app, so, show us. And so he showed this app where it just blew everyone away. He developed this app where it connects with our database system in the district that uploads, and it will update all the grades on this app. And anytime the grades drop in any class, a student will get a notification. So he developed this app, and I'm just thinking, this is a student who is autistic, who has a couple of D's and F's. And I was a little concerned when I said, before you present this, you might want to get your grades up. He go, oh no, I can change that. I'm thinking, wait, what way are you changing it? Are you gonna just go into the system and hack it? But those are, that's an example of, like, this student is just passionate. And of course we have to give them the academic support. So we met as a teacher, a student study team, to see how we can help him bring up his grades, which he did. But we also want to be able to foster this innovation and not shut those kids down. So going back to, students may not be strong academically, but they can tinker. And so that's why that GPA requirement, we have to remove it, because we have students of all different abilities, and they have that passion. And if they're passionate about it, I think the whole academic piece will just follow. We can just support him but foster those ideas, the innovation, and help them build the resiliency. If it doesn't work, keep going back and trying it out.
Wow, that's nice. He's about to get paid.
Right. No, so we're going to take him to cabinet, and we have our ways of kind of getting him to get this app going, because if it notifies a kid when their grades drop in any class.
That is fair.
Talk about real time. He had a real time problem that he solved, and so that's what we want our students to do. Is like, sometimes our students are looking for answers or trying to solve problems that don't exist yet. And so we want them to think with that mindset, that being innovative.
That is fantastic. So your school, eSTEM Academy, has two pathways, medical science and engineering and design. What does that look like in practice, and how is the curriculum aligned to the real world?
Okay, so how we came up with those two pathways is through like student survey, like what is it that they would like to see, and then also we invited like the industry, partners and asked them what is it that you see, because we can sit here and do computer science and do all kinds of pathways, but they said, there will always be jobs in the medical science field and engineering, and so those are our two pathways, and so. Our goal, as a student comes in, our goal is to get them high school, to meet the high school credit requirement. That's the minimum. And then our next step, our next goal is to also get them A through G eligible, which is in the state of California, when you're A through G eligible, you take X amount of years of courses in different subject areas that you are eligible for a UC, which is California University, or the CSU system. So the minimum is you're going to graduate high school. The next step is our goal is to get you A through G compliant. And now with the College and Career Index, the whole accountability system in California, we also want our students to be CTE ready. And I think they can be both A through G and CTE, which is pretty much industry ready. So with that, they're still required to take, everything that a typical comprehensive high school student has to take. But where we work on that CTE pathway, and the pathway is their electives. So instead of taking just random electives that students can choose from, we actually have courses that build up on each other. So 9th grade, the elective, all of our STEM students take an intro to computer science and engineering. And then since all 9th graders have to take biology anyways, we actually hired a medical doctor to teach that class. So she teaches medical bio. So they're getting the medical component, and they're getting exposure to the engineering their 9th grade year. So that allows them time to figure out what is it that I really like, and what am I passionate about, and what class really clicked with me. Then as sophomores, they then have to select either they're going to go into biomedical, or they're going to go into engineering. And so that's where their electives are. So as sophomores, if you're in medical, you're going to take medical anatomy and physiology, which is learning about the human body. And then as juniors and seniors, they're going to take classes on pathology. Because in all honesty, why do we have healthcare? Because people are sick. And so why do people get sick? So to understand the virus and the bacteria and the microbiology of all of that. And then the senior year is the prevention and biotechnology. So we incorporate that. Those are all CTE courses. And to make it CTE, I guess you can say eligible, because our teachers have CTE credentials. So we're very intentional about that. So not only are they getting the curriculum that is college level, they're getting CTE completion as well. Same with our engineering. We have, so as a ninth grader, they took intro to engineering. As a sophomore, they would go into CAD too, which is, you know, that class that most engineers, and that's the feedback we got from the engineering industry is all kids need to know CAD. And then they also have options of robotics, AP computer science, AP, you know, principles. So they have AP and honors options as well. So even CTE pathway has AP and honors options. So we're giving our students a variety of options to meet the college and career index, which is the accountability system from the state.
I'm excited about the school.
Right. I'm excited too. And we're only in year 2, so excited to see what year 3 and 4 are. So we actually got a grant. Last year we wrote a grant, and it was crazy. It was late nights and just staying late with our medical bio teacher, Dr. Ald, and we sat there and we wrote this grant, and we actually got a grant from the state of California to develop these 2 course sequence, which is the pathology and the biomedical intervention. So we're excited because there's not another school in high school in California that's offering such classes. So we'll be the first.
Wow. So in looking at the pictures, and this really blew me away, right? So I'm looking at the pictures at the school site, and it looks, I'm like, this is Google. This isn't a high school. This is Google, man. I've never seen a high school ever look like that. So how does the design of the school play into student engagement?
Well, just to give you a little background on how we came about with the design. So when we started the process, this district had contracted with LPA, which is an engineering company, and they're known for you know, designing educational buildings and other buildings as well. So the first thing we did was we sat down with them. When I say we, that means myself and our Eastwell STEM Advisory Committee, which is made up of students, parents, teachers, and community members. And so we sat down. The first thing we did was like, okay, instead of building a building and then trying to, like, you know, blend in or trying to fit in with the building, let's build the building with the idea of it's going to best service our kids and really, you know, get the kids to learn and to collaborate in all of those founding principles. So the first thing we did was we profiled, what does a 21st century learner look like? So that conversation was a year-long conversation. What does a 21st century learner look like? What does project-based learning looks like? What does it mean to be innovative? What does it mean to integrate technology and hands-on real-world science? What does all of that look like? And so from there, we also visited a couple of high schools in Southern California as well as Northern California. What do those buildings look like? What did we like? What did we not like? What would work for us, and so forth. So after all that, we came up with the idea that we wanted space where learning can happen anywhere, whether it's inside the classroom or outside. We wanted collaborative spaces, and that's where we came up with the idea, or came up with the design that there's not a single classroom with 4 walls. On the bottom floor, we have specialized engineering labs as well as medical for both pathways. And we talked about how, you know, the students need to be able to go from like quick lecture to like hands-on. Let's move. Okay, we're in this room, and now all these rooms are interconnecting. They're going to go where the hospital beds are, and then after they do that, they jump over to the computer so they can see data, and, you know, and so all of that, we got so much input from all stakeholders that it came to the point where we realized this is a building that we want. This is a building that we think will really promote learning inside and out, and promote the collaboration, the innovation, and, you know, and transparency. That was very important. We said, someone was to walk through this building, what would we want them to see? And we said, we want we want to showcase the student learning and the teaching and learning. And so there's a lot of glass. There's a lot of, in fact, with the engineering company just asked me for some binary codes. So I'm going to send them some, I guess you can say quotes or inspirational quotes so we can put it on the glass. We want it engaging and interactive. So when someone walks through, they see a bunch of zeros and ones, which is binary code. I had to look that up, by the way. I wasn't sure what that was. And I want them to say, what does this mean? Okay, let's look it up. You know, oh, this is, you know, be the best at getting better, or, you know, collaboration or inquiry and all of that. So we wanted the building to really, really just be able to, I guess you can say, foster innovation and cross-curricular learning and just collaborative spaces.
Fantastic.
I think there's a second part to that.
Fantastic. Okay. I'm getting some feedback. Hopefully that won't be on the playback. So now I want to ask you about this, because there's been a theme running through this interview about collaboration. I keep hearing collaboration. Earlier you mentioned collaborative teams. What does that look like? And how do they work with kids in terms of projects and kids sort of discovering themselves and what they like to do?
So collaborative teams, I guess, where I'm fortunate, and we even talked about this once we move into the building, because right now our teachers are on the main campus and they're really just all over. But we have built-in collaboration time, teacher collaboration, an hour and a half every week. So our STEM team of teachers, and they're from different subject areas. We've got language arts, we have biology, we have chemistry, and they're coming together. And I think to them, the cross-curricular piece is so important that they collaborate. And we don't just look at, okay, the curriculum, we look at the whole child. So we've been looking at data. I was fortunate enough this year for HR to give me a STEM counselor. So she and I, we run reports. We look at DNF lists. We look at the students who are struggling. We just had progress report. So we sit down as a group, a collaborative group, and we look at each student as a whole. Okay, this kid has multiple D's and F's in this class, what do we do? What's the plan of action for this student? Yes, does it take time? Does it take work? Yes, it does. But we see the benefit of it when that kid walks into one class and say, well, so-and-so told me you're struggling in that class. Why, was this a pattern? And so when the kid realizes, oh my goodness, my teachers are talking to each other, it makes such a huge impact. Like the students realize they care about me. And so I'm going to work harder for them. And so with the collaboration as well, project-based learning right now, I took a team of teachers to the Buck Institute this past summer training for project-based learning. So we came back, so we're in first year of implementation, and we know we're gonna have some hits and misses, but that's how we learn. So we're working on a STEM-wide, school-wide project where the students are having to do a science fair. Last year was our first year submitting to the district, and we actually brought home 14 awards, and we even went to the county. So for that being our first time, we were pretty excited. So our students are now doing a project-based learning. All 330 students are doing it, but they don't necessarily have classes together. We gave them choice. You can choose your group, but sometimes they're not in the same class. And so what we're doing is all of the teachers, our STEM team said, we're going to mentor between 6 to 8 groups of students, but we don't see them every day and over the place. But how are we going to do that? So because we're also piloting bring your own device, our teachers are piloting that. We use Canvas, which is a learning management system, and right now we manage all the groups. All the kids are on. They submit stuff, we check, and we give them feedback through there, as well as meeting face to face. But that collaboration, it wouldn't happen unless we were all collaborating together as teachers and their parents. The parents all have access to Canvas, and they love the parent view because they can see real time what their students are doing. And so we make sure that we involve all stakeholders, but we're doing this, I guess, in a sense, virtual learning, where the kids are doing this all online in the evenings, on weekends, and we're able to see that and monitor and give them feedback. And this is all outside of class.
Wow, it's fantastic. I love this, Dr. Law.
Right. And even though I'm administration, I said, give me some groups. And so I've been working with a couple of kids. They've got some outrageous ideas, and you got to kind of bring them back down. And, but it's neat to see that their passion. But it's also good to walk them through the process of like, how are you going to control this variable? How are you going to control that? And what are you going to do here if this doesn't work? And then when they come back and say, well, it didn't work. Okay, try again. It's not the end of the world. Try it again. How else can you change this up? So I love being in that. And so as I mentioned earlier on our phone call, as leaders, we have to roll up our sleeve and get in the trenches with the teachers, because if we just sit back and say, okay, do the work, you don't have that respect and you don't have that motivation in teachers to work as hard as we want them to. And so, I think that's very important.
So what do you hope for the graduates of eSTEM?
Obviously we want them to be college and career ready, and in our case, in the field of STEM. But really, if it's anything, it's the 21st century skills. We want to prepare them for jobs that don't exist. And I know we hear that all the time. But I want our students to be resilient. I see a lot of them, they're so used to, oh, I got straight A's in middle school. How could I get a B? This can't happen. What is going on? And they cry. And I'm like, no, pick up your head and go. It's like, don't give up. How can we get better? And so let's get a plan of action. So just the resilience, the grit, and just having the ability to think and problem solve on their own without a set of directions. If it's anything, it's to be able to go out there and solve problems of the real world and not cry about failure, but to see it as an opportunity to do better and to keep trying.
So before we go, what are your recommendations for those principals or superintendents who want to replicate the successes of eSTEM Academy?
I think, like anything in education, focus on the kids. What is it that, like we said, when we built this program, the school, we focused on the learner profile. What does a 21st century student look like and what are their needs? But I think just as important is the process of involving all stakeholders, the process of transparency, the process of just involving, industry sector and colleges. We're working with Norco College right now, which is down the street, for dual enrollment. So next year, our STEM students can take college courses on campus and get college credit. Just look at provide all opportunities for the students, but you won't get all that input unless you involve all the stakeholders, and that process is so important. So just focus on the process of building a school, and that's to involve all stakeholders and to be transparent about the communication and everything else.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Lawe, for being a guest on the show. I had an awesome time. I literally cannot wait to share this podcast out there and hope that other people will listen to it. You dropped some awesome gems today.
Thank you.
Just amazing. You're welcome. So people, you know how I do this, okay? This is going up on SoundCloud, iTunes. I need you to subscribe and leave a review. This is going up on YouTube. Hey, subscribe as well. And I'm going to share this on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and also a blog post will be going up. So as always, people, invest in you, EDU, peace. Thank you again, Dr. Lawe, for being a guest on the show.
Thank you for having me.
You are welcome.